Last night, I heard that former President George H.W. Bush had passed away. And from the standpoint of a Maverick moderate, I want to share my thoughts with you. We'll get to that in just a moment. This is the SOTA. This is the Scoot on the Air YouTube channel. And we don't have any signage yet, but you will see this develop over time. Here's the sign right now, SOTA. This is the daily hit of Scoot on the Air YouTube. And we'd love for you to subscribe to this because this is a channel that we are just building. And again, everything that comes from this channel comes from the standpoint of a Maverick moderate. What is a Maverick moderate? It's a tough moderate that has strong conviction and opinions about everything, but just refuses to be part of the right or the left. I mean, I'm registered as an independent, but I find myself feeling like a Maverick moderate. I mean, I definitely have strong convictions. This idea that moderates are wishy-washy, that's a bunch of BS that the right tried to create that image of moderates, because the right didn't want to admit that a lot of people on the right are very moderate. A lot of people on the left are very moderate. I don't want to get into that here. We'll talk more about that. But I do want to share a few thoughts about former President George H.W. Bush. He was, in my radio career, he was the only president that I ever had a one-on-one conversation with. And it was during the campaign of 1992. And President Bush was up for re-election running against Bill Clinton. And I put in a request, and it was really rare that a president would go one-on-one with a talk show host in a place like New Orleans, but he did. I got a call from President Bush while he was on Air Force One. And the whole process of getting that call was just amazing. I mean, the White House called me the night before at my home and said, this is the way it's going to happen. We're going to put you on hold 1 hour before you actually talk to the president. They wanted to establish that link. And then I think it was Marlin Fitzwater at the time, who may have been chief of staff, although I'm not sure about that. Marlin Fitzwater was the one who was going to say, here is the president of the United States. And after that voice, then Bush came on. I mean, it was amazing. It was really, really cool to talk to the president. And it was so cool to have a president of the United States say, hey, Scoot, how you doing? And I remember my radio career when people said, well, you need a last name. I mean, you can't just be Scoot. Well, I'm just Scoot. And I always told them, I said, if a president of the United States can accept me as Scoot, then so can you. And so I'll always remember that about George H.W. Bush. But George Bush Sr. was an extraordinary man. He was more than a president. He was a statesman. He was a World War II pilot, shot down, almost died. He was an ambassador to China under President Ford. He was the director of the CIA. A lot of people don't know that, but George H.W. Bush was the director of the CIA. He became vice president for Ronald Reagan. And then, after 2 terms, he ran for president, and he won. I think in a way, George Bush Sr. is kind of a forgotten president. He may not have been the most dynamic. In fact, let's think of it this way. Let's say the recent presidents are the Beatles. Okay, I would say that Ronald Reagan was Paul McCartney. Bill Clinton was John Lennon. George W. Bush was Ringo Starr. And who was Barack Obama? Barack Obama was the black guy who was writing all of the great songs, all of the great R&B songs that the Beatles covered. And so that leaves kind of the quiet one, George H.W. Bush. He was the George Harrison of the Beatles. Important, smart, significant. It's almost as if some people liked George because they thought nobody else liked him. But I had great respect for George Bush Sr. I thought he was a great man. I think he was married for 72 years to Barbara. And he was so in love with her that it was refreshing to see that. I don't think he got the credit he deserved. It's interesting why he did not win re-election. There were a lot of Democrats who thought because the first Gulf War was a success. Remember, this was when it was a little simpler. Saddam Hussein and Iraq invaded Kuwait. We went to Kuwait and pushed the troops out of Kuwait, pushed them back into Iraq. We freed Kuwait. That's what our military was designed for, protecting a border. Now our military is involved in these wars with ISIS and the Taliban, and it's almost like we're more of a military police force than a military that was originally designed to protect borders. So it was a lot easier to push the Iraqi troops out of Kuwait and end the mission than it is to go in and do what we're trying to do now. It's not the fault of anything other than this is just the way it is now. And I guess it's just part of the globalization of politics and the world. But after being victorious, President Bush Sr. was seen as such a formidable foe that a lot of Democrats didn't even put their name in the ring. Who did? Bill Clinton. I mean, there were others, but a lot of prominent Democrats didn't even want to run because, like, this guy just won the war. This guy's a hero. This guy's going to get reelected. Clinton was stubborn, and he said, I'm doing it anyway. And here's what he benefited from. There is this tendency for populations after a war to respect the leader that led to victory. But when the war's over, it's almost as if the populace wants a fresh new start. Because the war's over, this is a new time. And they want a fresh new beginning. And that's what Bill Clinton represented. And George H. Walker Bush, even though he was victorious, he was still tied to the war. And then there was a thing that he said at the Dome in New Orleans during the Republican convention, read my lips, no new taxes. So what did the guy do? The guy did something that nobody does today. And you can't blame people for not wanting to do it for this reason. What did George Bush do? He raised taxes. But that was a compromise to the Democrats. Yeah, there, I've used the C word. George Bush went back on a campaign promise as a compromise to the Democrats, and the Democrats during the election turned around and used that against Bush. So the guy tried to help the Democrats, and then the Democrats, this is how dirty politics is. He tried to help them by compromising on a bill. And then the Democrats came back and used it against him. And so that really has led us to where we are today when it comes to partisan politics. But I thought there was just something really stable about George Bush Sr., and I just had so much respect for him as a president and as a man. And I think that in a lot of ways he has not been appreciated, but hopefully now he will be even more appreciated. And it's a shame that sometimes it's not until somebody passes away that we really appreciate and understand what they meant. It's going to be interesting to see how President Trump reacts to Bush. He doesn't always act in a predictable manner when it comes to other popular politicians. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But my thoughts and prayers are with his soul and his family. And he led a long life. He lived to 94, led a long life. I have a feeling he's with Barbara, who passed away back in April. And I have a feeling they're together now, which is exactly where they should be. George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., was more than a president. He was the last statesman we had as a president. Let's hope he's not the last statesman we have as a president. And by the way, coming up on the SOTA YouTube channel, I've got an interview with a dancer, a stripper, a dancer, exotic entertainer, adult club dancer at an upscale club in downtown New Orleans in the French Quarter. There have been some recent attempts to raise the age of strippers from 18 to 21 in the name of fighting sex trafficking, but it's politically motivated, and it really doesn't do anything to fight sex trafficking. Recently, New Orleans police went on a raid of several clubs. They found nothing linking the clubs to sex trafficking. Those who get caught up in sex trafficking, it's not like strip clubs are a farm team for them. They don't come from there. They come from elsewhere. I'm very much in favor of fighting sex trafficking because it's horrible. And I remind you that as bad as the people are who coerce these girls and get them into this life, and some guys too, as bad as they are, you know who's just as bad or maybe even worse? The rich men that pay a lot of money to have sex with underage girls and underage boys. Those, to me, are the true villains. As bad as the people are who set all this up, if it were not for the people that were paying to buy that, were paying to have this sex, if they weren't paying for these young people to have sex, if they weren't paying for it, this wouldn't be a problem. So I try to set the record straight on that. Anyway, her name is Sable, and this should launch Monday on the channel at 9 a.m. And I do a daily hit. This is another daily hit. It's a special weekend edition of our daily hit. But I'm going to do a daily hit every day, Monday through Friday, where we just talk about some of the top issues of the day. And I want to give you an opportunity to have information as you go through the day. If you're liberal or moderate and you've got really conservative friends, what you'll get from me and what you'll get from the SOTA daily hit and this channel is you'll get ammunition to use against them. You'll get ammunition to use against their arguments because some of their arguments are so freaking lame and they're so easy to attack. And it's so easy to point out the political hypocrisy. And that's what we address on a regular basis. So again, I hope you will subscribe. Love the signage, but we are going to get better site. I hope you will subscribe to the Scoot on the Air YouTube channel, and you'll get an alert every time we do something new. And it's going to be a wide variety of things from pop culture to politics. And sometimes it's just going to be, stupid stuff. I want to remind you that you could also join me on Facebook. It's Scoot on the Air. And I post a lot of stuff on Facebook. You can get involved in those conversations as well. You can also send me a private message, personal message on Facebook. My Instagram account is also Scoot on the Air. And my email address is scootontheair@gmail.com. One day I'll have better signs. But I look forward to that interview. I haven't seen the finished product. We videoed it last night at a restaurant in the French Quarter, and that's part of what we're going to do. I'll do the daily hits every day, but once a week, this is our plan. Once a week, we'll do a full interview show, and we're hoping to launch it every Monday at 9 a.m. There may be some changes there, but that is our plan. And the daily hit comes on between 9 and 10 Central Time, between 10 and 11 Eastern Time, and 7 and 8 Pacific Time. Yeah, that's right. Sometimes I get confused. Anyway, we hope you'll join us on a regular basis. Feel free to comment. And again, if you want to communicate with me, go to my Facebook page. It's also Scoot on the Air. Instagram, Scoot on the Air. And man, you are part of the very, very beginning of this. I have great confidence in where this is going to go, and I appreciate you being with us from the beginning. Have a great weekend.